Rebecca Wilson drove her old blue sedan into the parking lot of Luxury Motors, the engine making a terrible rattling noise that had gotten worse over the last few weeks. The car gave one final shudder before dying completely, right there in the parking space. Rebecca closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This was not how today was supposed to go, but maybe it was a sign that she really did need a new car, no matter how much the thought of a car payment scared her. "Is our car sick again, Mommy?" asked her 7-year-old daughter Emily from the back seat. Rebecca forced a smile as she turned around. "Yeah, honey, but that's why we're here, remember? To find a new one that won't get sick." Emily nodded seriously, her dark curls bouncing. She clutched her favorite coloring book and box of crayons that Rebecca had brought to keep her busy. "Can we get a blue one like Ms. Patel next door? Her car is pretty." "We'll see what they have," Rebecca said, not wanting to promise anything. She knew her budget was tight, and her credit wasn't the best after years of struggling to make ends meet as a single mom. They walked hand in hand toward the gleaming glass doors of Luxury Motors. Rebecca had chosen this dealership because it was on the bus route to her second job, and they had advertised financing for everyone on their website. The summer heat beat down on them, making Rebecca wish she'd worn something lighter than her navy blue blouse and only decent pair of dress pants. She'd wanted to look professional, like someone who could afford a car from a place called Luxury Motors. Inside, the air conditioning hit them like a wave of relief. The showroom was huge, with polished marble floors and spotless cars arranged, under special lighting that made them shine like jewels. Men in expensive suits walked around with clipboards, talking to well-dressed couples who nodded and smiled. Rebecca felt out of place immediately. Her worn handbag suddenly seemed embarrassingly shabby, and she was conscious of the small stain on her sleeve that she hadn't been able to get out. But she straightened her shoulders. She was here for Emily, who needed reliable transportation, to school and her doctor's appointments. A young man with perfectly styled hair approached them, his smile fading slightly as he took in Rebecca's appearance. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone suggesting he doubted he could. "Yes," Rebecca said firmly. "I need a reliable used car, something safe, good on gas, with affordable monthly payments." The man, his name tag read Tyler, nodded without enthusiasm. "I'll need to check your credit first. Why don't you fill out this application while I find someone who handles economy options?" Rebecca sat down with Emily in the waiting area. The chairs were leather and more comfortable than their couch at home. Emily settled on the floor with her coloring book, while Rebecca filled out the application, trying not to worry about the numbers she was writing down. Her 2 jobs, day shifts at the hospital cafeteria and weekend receptionist at a local gym, brought in just enough to cover rent, food, and Emily's needs. The old car had been paid off years ago, a gift from her parents before they moved to Arizona for retirement. An hour passed. Emily had colored 3 pictures and was getting restless. Rebecca had given her the 1 granola bar from her purse and was running out of ways to keep her entertained. Other customers had come and gone, getting prompt attention. Each time the door opened, a blast of hot air reminded Rebecca that her car was dead in the parking lot, and she had no way to leave if this didn't work out. Finally, a heavy-set man, with thinning hair and an expensive watch approached. His face was already set in a frown as he held her application. "Ms. Wilson," he said loudly, not bothering to sit down. "I'm Mr. Peterson, the sales manager." Rebecca stood up, smoothing her pants nervously. "Yes, that's me. Have you found something that might work for us?" Mr. Peterson made a show of looking through her application again. "Your credit score is 560. You have 2 part-time jobs with a combined income of $32,000 a year. You're already paying 40% of your income in rent." He looked up, his expression making it clear what he thought of her financial situation. "There's nothing on our lot that would work for you." Rebecca felt her face grow hot. She was aware of other customers glancing over, curious about the conversation. "But your website said financing for everyone. I only need something basic, maybe under $10,000. Mr. Peterson laughed, the sound short and dismissive. "Our inventory starts at $25,000, Ms. Wilson. The financing for everyone applies to people with at least a 620 credit score and verifiable income that can support a payment. You don't qualify. Emily had stopped coloring and was watching the exchange with wide eyes. Rebecca lowered her voice. Surely you must have something more affordable. A trade-in someone left behind? I really need a car. Mine just died in your parking lot, and I have to get my daughter to school tomorrow and myself to work. That sounds like a personal problem, Mr. Peterson said, not bothering to lower his voice at all. There's a bus stop half a mile down the road, or you could try Happy Dave's used cars on the east side. They specialize in customers like you. A well-dressed couple nearby exchanged looks, the woman whispering something behind her hand. Rebecca felt tears threatening but blinked them back. She wouldn't cry here, not in front of Emily, not in front of these people. I'd like to speak to the owner, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. Mr. Peterson's eyebrows shot up. The owner? Lady, the owner of this dealership wouldn't waste his time talking to someone who can't even afford our cheapest car. Now, I have actual customers waiting. He signaled to a security guard who had been standing by the door. The man, tall and broad-shouldered in a black uniform, walked over immediately. Please escort Ms. Wilson and her child out, Mr. Peterson said. They were just leaving. The security guard, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I need to ask you to leave. Rebecca gathered her purse and Emily's coloring supplies with shaking hands. Emily looked confused and scared. Why are we leaving, Mommy? Did you get a car? Not today, sweetie, Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice light. This wasn't the right place for us. As the security guard walked them to the door, Rebecca heard Mr. Peterson laughing with another salesman. Can you believe she wanted to talk to Mr. Morgan, as if he'd care about some broke single mom? Outside, the heat hit them again like a wall. Emily tugged at Rebecca's hand. Mommy, why was that man so mean? Don't we deserve a nice car too? Rebecca knelt down despite the hot pavement burning through her thin dress pants. She looked into her daughter's innocent face and found strength there. Of course we do, Em. That man was wrong to treat us that way. We'll find a better place with better people. She pulled out her phone to call for a tow truck for her dead car, wincing at what that would cost. As they sat in the thin strip of shade beside the building waiting, Emily leaned against her mother's side. I don't like it here, she whispered. The cars are pretty, but the people are ugly inside. Rebecca put her arm around her wise little girl. You're right, Em. And you know what? We're going to be okay. We always figure it out, don't we? What Rebecca didn't know as she comforted her daughter in the unforgiving summer heat was that across town, a man she hadn't seen in 8 years was about to watch security footage of the entire humiliating encounter. A man whose name was on the very dealership that had just thrown them out. The tow truck driver had been kind enough to drop Rebecca and Emily at their apartment complex without charging extra for the passenger ride. It was a small kindness that nearly brought Rebecca to tears after the day they'd had. The driver even helped push her dead car into a parking spot, promising to return tomorrow when she figured out where to take it. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a faded brick building with no elevator. By the time they reached their door, Emily was dragging her feet, tired and hungry. Inside, the air was stuffy from being closed up all day. Rebecca turned on the ceiling fan before opening the fridge to figure out dinner. Grilled cheese, okay? For tonight, Em? She asked, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. We can have those carrot sticks you like on the side. Emily nodded, dropping her backpack on the small kitchen table that doubled as Rebecca's desk. Can I watch cartoons while you cook? Just for a little bit, Rebecca agreed, grateful for the chance to pull herself together. Once Emily was settled, on their worn couch with the TV on low volume, Rebecca leaned against the kitchen counter and finally let a few tears escape. How was she going to manage without a car? The bus route didn't go near Emily's school, and catching 3 different buses to get to her weekend job would turn a 15-minute drive into nearly 2 hours of travel each way. A taxi was too expensive, and none of her neighbors worked close, enough to her jobs to carpool. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and started pulling out bread and cheese for dinner. The butter was almost gone, but there was enough for tonight. Tomorrow's problems would have to wait for tomorrow. After dinner, Rebecca tucked Emily into bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Sleep tight, ladybug," she whispered, kissing her. Daughter's forehead. "Mommy, are you still sad about the car?" Emily asked, her eyes already heavy with sleep. Rebecca brushed a strand of hair from Emily's face. "A little bit, but I'm already thinking of solutions. That's what grown-ups do when there's a problem. Like when my rabbit got torn and you sewed him back together. You found a solution." "Exactly like that," Rebecca smiled. "Now go to sleep, and when you wake up, I'll have a new plan already." But as Rebecca sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and calculator, no brilliant solutions presented themselves. She could ask her parents for help, but they were living on a fixed income now, and they'd already done so much over the years. Her friends were all struggling too, many of them single moms like her. Exhausted, she was about to give up and go to bed when her phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number with a local area code. Probably a spam call, but at this point she'd talk to anyone who might offer a solution. "Hello?" she answered, trying not to sound as tired as she felt. There was a pause, and then a voice she hadn't heard in 8 years said, "Rebecca, it's Daniel." Rebecca's legs went weak and she sat down hard on the kitchen chair. Daniel Morgan, her college sweetheart, the man who'd once promised to love her forever, then disappeared into his new life when his tech startup took off. "Daniel?" she managed to say, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Why are you calling me?" "I heard about what happened today at Luxury Motors," he said, his voice deeper than she remembered, with a tightness that suggested he was choosing his words carefully. Rebecca frowned, confused. "What do you mean you heard? How could you possibly know about that?" "The dealership is owned by a subsidiary of Morgan Enterprises," Daniel explained, and she could picture him running a hand through his hair the way he always did when uncomfortable. "Their security cameras are linked to our central system. Customer experience team flagged the footage for inappropriate employee behavior." Rebecca felt her face flush with fresh embarrassment. So not only had she been humiliated in person, but people had watched it on video too. "Great," she said, anger rising to replace the shock. "So now I'm a training video on how not to treat customers? Wonderful." "No, Rebecca, it's not like that," Daniel said quickly. "The system flagged it, and when the summary report came to me, I recognized you immediately. I've spent the last 3 hours trying to track down your phone number." Rebecca was silent for a moment, digesting this. "So you saw me get thrown out of a car dealership and what? Felt sorry for me?" "I don't need your pity, Daniel." "It's not pity," he said, and she could hear the frustration in his voice. "It's anger at how you were treated in a business that bears my name even indirectly. It's a lot of things, but not pity." Rebecca's eyes drifted to the small framed photo on the bookshelf. Emily at 5, grinning with her 2 front teeth missing. The resemblance to Daniel was there if you knew to look for it, especially around the eyes. "We're fine, Daniel. We've been fine for 8 years, she said, each word careful and measured. "The security guard said your car died in the parking lot." Rebecca closed her eyes. Of course he knew that too. "I'll figure it out. I always do." There was silence on the line. And then Daniel asked softly, "Who's we, Rebecca?" Her heart pounded. She'd never told him about Emily. By the time she'd found out she was pregnant, Daniel had already moved to Silicon Valley, and his assistant had made it clear that he was too busy building his empire to take personal calls from an ex-girlfriend. "My daughter and I," she said finally. "Emily, she's 7. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Rebecca could almost hear the calculations happening in Daniel's head. 7, he repeated, his voice strained. "Rebecca, is she—" "Yes," Rebecca cut him off. "She is. But we've been doing just fine without you, Daniel. We don't need you swooping in now because you feel guilty." She heard him take a deep breath. "I understand why you feel that way, but please, let me make this right. Not as whatever we were, but as someone who wants to correct an injustice, and what does that even mean? It means I'd like to meet with you tomorrow at the dealership. Mr. Peterson will be there. The owner, my friend David, will be there. And I'll be there, with a solution to your car problem that you can accept without feeling like it's charity. It's the very least I can do. Rebecca thought about the buses she'd need to take to get Emily to school, the jobs she might lose if she couldn't get to work on time, the endless struggle that had been her life for so long. Just a meeting, she said finally. No promises beyond that. 10 o'clock, Daniel suggested. I can send a car for you. No, Rebecca interrupted. I'll get there on my own. She still had some pride left after all. After hanging up, Rebecca sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. The girl who had loved Daniel Morgan was long gone, replaced by a woman who had learned to rely only on herself. But for Emily's sake, she would swallow her pride and hear what he had to say. She had no idea that the next day would change everything, not just because of a car, but because sometimes the past refuses to stay buried when there are truths waiting to be uncovered. Rebecca woke up earlier than usual the next morning, her mind too busy with thoughts of the upcoming meeting to sleep. She'd tossed and turned all night, replaying memories of Daniel from their college days, his laugh, the way he'd bring her, coffee during late-night study sessions, how excited he'd get talking about his ideas for changing the world through technology. Back then, he'd been just another ambitious student with big dreams, not the billionaire his company had made him into. She made breakfast for Emily, trying to act normal despite the butterflies in her stomach. We have a special errand this morning, she explained as Emily munched on her cereal. We're going back to that car place. Emily's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. The mean place with the angry man? Rebecca nodded. Yes, but today will be different. Someone I used to know a long time ago wants to help us get a car. Is he nice? Emily asked, her 7-year-old instincts always able to cut straight to what mattered. He was nice, Rebecca said carefully. I haven't seen him in a very long time, so I'm not sure what he's like now. They dressed in their best clothes, Rebecca in the blue dress she usually saved for job interviews, and Emily in her Sunday outfit, with the ribbon that matched her eyes. Rebecca did both their hair, even adding a touch of makeup to her own face. She told herself it wasn't for Daniel, but simply because she wanted to look professional and put together after yesterday's humiliation. Their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, gave them a ride to the dealership after hearing about their car troubles. You, call me when you're done, she insisted. Don't waste money on a taxi. As they pulled into the parking lot of Luxury Motors, Rebecca's mouth went dry. Despite her determination to stay calm and businesslike, her hands were shaking slightly as she thanked Mrs. Chen for the ride. The dealership looked different in the morning light, somehow more intimidating with its gleaming windows and perfect rows of expensive cars. Rebecca held Emily's hand tightly as they approached the entrance, stopping short when she saw what was parked directly in front of the main doors. A Rolls-Royce. Not just any Rolls-Royce, but a silver Phantom that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 years. It was parked diagonally across 2 premium spots, as if the driver had been in too much of a hurry to park properly. Wow, breathed Emily. That's the prettiest car I've ever seen. It looks like a princess should ride in it. Rebecca swallowed hard. The car screamed Daniel Morgan in a way that made her almost turn around and leave. The man she'd known would never have been so flashy, so obviously trying to show off his wealth. What had 8 years of success done to him? Before she could decide whether to stay or go, the glass doors of the dealership swung open, and a small crowd of people spilled out. Salespeople, customers, even what looked like maintenance staff, all with phones out taking pictures of the Rolls-Royce. In the center of the group was a tall figure in a perfectly tailored gray suit. Daniel. Rebecca's breath caught. He looked both familiar and like a stranger, the same dark hair and strong jawline, but with subtle signs of the passing years. Fine lines around his eyes, a more confident posture, clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Yet when he turned and saw her, the smile that crossed his face was achingly familiar. Rebecca, he said, breaking away from the group and walking toward them. He stopped a respectful distance away, his eyes moving from her face to Emily, then Back again. Thank you for coming. Before Rebecca could respond, Mr. Peterson, the sales manager from yesterday, rushed out of the building. His face was flushed with excitement, completely transformed from the contemptuous expression he'd worn when speaking to Rebecca. Mr. Morgan, what an unexpected honor. We've prepared the private showing room for you, with our most exclusive models. Right this way, sir. Daniel didn't even look at the man. His eyes remained on Rebecca, with an expression she couldn't quite read. I'm not here to see your cars, Peterson. I'm here to see Ms. Wilson and her daughter. Mr. Peterson's smile froze, then slowly faded as he recognized Rebecca. His eyes darted between her and Daniel, confusion written all over his face. Ms. Wilson? But she was just here yesterday and you humiliated her in front of her child and your customers, Daniel finished, his voice quiet, but with an edge that made everyone within hearing distance fall silent. That's not how we treat people at any establishment connected to Morgan Enterprises. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of someone taking photos with their phone. Rebecca felt her face grow warm as she realized they were becoming a spectacle. Perhaps we could continue this inside? She suggested quietly. Daniel nodded, then turned to the crowd. If you'll excuse us, please. This is a private matter. His tone made it clear it wasn't a request, and the group quickly dispersed, though many continued to steal glances at them. As they walked toward the entrance, Emily tugged at Rebecca's hand. Mommy, who is that man? She whispered, loud enough for Daniel to hear. Rebecca hesitated, not sure how to answer, but Daniel crouched down to Emily's level, his expensive suit touching the pavement without him seeming to care. My name is Daniel, he said simply. I'm an old friend of your mom's, and I'm very pleased to meet you, Emily. Emily studied him seriously. Are you the one who's going to help us get a car that's not sick all the time? Daniel smiled, and Rebecca was struck by how similar their expressions were. The same slight tilt of the head, the same curious look in their eyes. That's right. Would you like to help pick it out? Emily nodded enthusiastically, then asked with a child's bluntness, Are you rich? You have a very fancy car. Emily, Rebecca scolded gently, embarrassed, but Daniel just laughed. It's okay. Yes, Emily, I am rich now, though I wasn't always. That car out there is just for show, really. I wanted to make sure everyone here paid attention today. He stood back up and gestured toward the door. Shall we go in? The owner is waiting, and he's very interested in making things right. Inside, the atmosphere had completely changed from the day before, where Rebecca had felt ignored and unwelcome yesterday. Today, every employee they passed greeted her with nervous smiles. Mr. Peterson trailed behind them, looking like he might be sick. Mr. Morgan, if I had known Ms. Wilson was a friend of yours, he began. Daniel turned to him with a cold expression that made the man step back. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You shouldn't need to know someone is connected to a wealthy person to treat them with basic respect. Every person who walks through those doors deserves the same courtesy, regardless of what they're wearing or what their credit score is. He turned to Rebecca, his expression softening. I asked David, the owner, to meet us in his office. I thought you might prefer privacy for this conversation. As they walked toward the back of the showroom, Rebecca felt a strange mixture of emotions, gratitude for Daniel standing up for her, embarrassment at needing his help, and a lingering anger that he'd been absent for so long. But most of all, she felt a growing anxiety about what would happen when he learned the full truth about Emily, a truth that was becoming more obvious with every moment they spent together. The owner's office was nothing like Rebecca had imagined. Instead of the flashy, intimidating space she expected, it was surprisingly homey, with family photos on the desk and a comfortable-looking couch where Emily immediately settled with a coloring book that a nervous secretary had provided. David Chen, the dealership owner, was a man about Daniel's age with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Ms. Wilson, I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am about what happened yesterday, he said, genuine regret in his voice. That's not how we do business here. Rebecca nodded, still feeling out of place despite everyone's efforts to make her comfortable. Thank you for saying that. David turned to Mr. Peterson, who was standing awkwardly by the door. "Tom, I think you have something to say to Ms. Wilson." Mr. Peterson stepped forward, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Ms. Wilson, I want to apologize for my behavior yesterday. It was unprofessional and unkind. There's no excuse for how I treated you and your daughter." Rebecca appreciated that he didn't offer excuses, but she could tell he was apologizing mainly because his boss and Daniel were watching. Still, she nodded. "Thank you for the apology. Tom, we'll discuss your future with the company later," David said firmly. "For now, you're suspended pending review. Please leave your company keycard with my assistant on your way out." Mr. Peterson's face paled, but he nodded and left without another word. Rebecca hadn't expected that and wasn't sure how to feel about someone losing their job because of her, even if he had been terrible. "That seems harsh," she said quietly after the door closed. David shook his head. "It's not just about you, Ms. Wilson. We've had 3 complaints about his behavior in the past month. This was the final straw." "Still," Daniel added, "I'm sorry. You had to see that. This meeting isn't meant to make you uncomfortable." For a few minutes, they discussed car options that would meet Rebecca's needs. Something reliable, good on gas, with reasonable payments. David pulled up several choices on his computer, showing Rebecca pictures and explaining the features of each. It was the kind of respectful treatment she should have received from the beginning. "These are all great options," Rebecca said, genuinely, grateful but still feeling the elephant in the room. The unspoken questions about her past with Daniel and Emily's parentage. "But I still don't understand why you're doing all this. We haven't spoken in 8 years, Daniel." David glanced between them, then stood up. "I think I'll check on those cars we discussed and have them brought around front for you to test drive. Emily, would you like to come see some colorful cars?" Emily looked up from her coloring. "Can I pick a blue one like Ms. Patel's?" "Absolutely." David smiled, holding out his hand. "We have several blue ones that might be perfect." Once they were alone, the office fell silent. Rebecca looked at Daniel, really looked at him, trying to reconcile the ambitious college student she'd known with this successful man in an expensive suit. "Why now, Daniel?" she finally asked, the question that had kept her awake all night. "After all this time?" Daniel moved to the window, looking out at the dealership floor where David was now showing Emily different blue cars. "When I saw the security footage, I recognized you immediately. And then I saw her." His voice faltered. "She has my mother's eyes." Rebecca felt her heart skip. "I never told you because by the time I found out, you had already moved to Silicon Valley. Your company was taking off and your assistant made it very clear you weren't taking personal calls." "I never gave that instruction," Daniel said quietly, turning back to face her. "Natalie took it upon herself to protect my time. She screened all my calls, decided which invitations I received, even filtered my emails. By the time I realized how many people she'd cut out of my life." He shook his head. "I fired her 3 years ago, but by then the damage was done." "You could have reached out before now," Rebecca pointed out, not ready to let him off the hook entirely. "I tried," he admitted. "About 5 years ago. I called your old number, but it was disconnected. I called your parents, but they'd moved. I even drove by your old apartment, but new people were living there. After a while, I figured you didn't want to be found, and I respected that." Rebecca thought about all the times she'd had to change her number to avoid debt collectors, all the different apartments they'd lived in over the years. It was possible he was telling the truth. "She doesn't know about you," Rebecca said, watching his reaction carefully. "I've told her that her father lives far away and can't visit, but that he would love her if he knew her." Daniel's eyes filled with tears, something Rebecca had only seen once before, the day his mother died during their junior year of college. "I've missed everything," he said, his voice rough. "Her first steps, first words, first day of school. All of it." "Yes," Rebecca said simply. There was no point denying it or sugarcoating the truth. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the desk between them. "This isn't charity," he said, seeming to read her thoughts. "It's a trust fund I've maintained for 8 years, adding to it every month. I may not have known about Emily, but somehow I couldn't close the account I initially set up for you. Rebecca stared at the envelope but didn't reach for it. What are you saying? When we broke up, when I moved to California, I set up a small investment account for you. I told myself it was to help with your student loans after graduation. Every month I added to it, even after I lost touch with you, even after I thought you'd moved on and forgotten me. He pushed the envelope closer. It's Emily's money now. It's not enough to make up for 8 years of absence, but it's a start. With hesitant fingers, Rebecca opened the envelope and pulled out a bank statement. The figure at the bottom made her gasp. It was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. I can't accept this, she said automatically, trying to hand it back. You're not accepting anything, Daniel replied. It's already Emily's, it always has been. I just didn't know her name until now. Rebecca looked out the window where Emily was sitting in a blue SUV, her small hand on the steering wheel. Her face lit up with excitement as David showed her how the radio worked. What happens now? She asked quietly. You can't just appear in her life with fancy cars and trust funds and expect everything to be okay. Daniel sat in the chair across from her, closing the distance between them. I'm not expecting anything, but I'd like a chance to know my daughter. And maybe a chance for you to get to know me again too. The real me. Not the billionaire or the guy in the Rolls-Royce. Just Daniel. The one who still drinks too much coffee and forgets to eat when he's working on a project. The one who never stopped wondering what happened to the girl he loved in college. Rebecca felt tears forming and blinked them back. I'm not that girl anymore. Life has changed me. Life has changed both of us, Daniel agreed. But I'd like to find out who we are now, if you're willing. Before Rebecca could answer, there was a knock at the door and Emily burst in, her eyes bright with excitement. Mommy, they have a blue car that's perfect. It has a special seat in the back just for me and a place to plug in your phone, and it doesn't make any weird noises at all. Rebecca and Daniel exchanged a look, a moment of shared understanding about the precious life they had created together, even if by accident. That sounds perfect, Rebecca said, her voice steadier than she felt. Why don't we go look at it together? As the three of them walked out of the office, Rebecca realized that whether she was ready or not, their lives had just changed forever. The truth was out, and there was no going back to the way things were, only forward into an uncertain but suddenly much brighter future. 3 months passed quickly. The seasons began to change, with summer heat giving way to crisp fall air. For Rebecca, it felt like her whole life had transformed just as swiftly as the weather. She drove her new blue SUV through familiar streets, heading to pick up Emily from her first piano lesson. The car wasn't flashy or overly expensive. She'd insisted on something practical despite Daniel's offers of more luxury models. It was reliable, safe, and most importantly, it was fully paid. For without making her feel like she'd accepted charity, Rebecca had been firm about that part. She'd allowed Daniel to set up a reasonable education fund for Emily, but refused anything that felt like he was buying his way back into their lives. We need to do this right, she'd told him. Emily deserves better than a father who thinks money can replace time. To his credit, Daniel had understood. Over the past 3 months, he'd been respectfully present but not pushy, getting to know Emily through occasional weekend visits and slowly rebuilding trust with Rebecca. The Rolls-Royce had never appeared again after that first day. It had merely been a statement to the dealership, not a lifestyle he expected Rebecca to adopt. Emily, with a child's remarkable adaptability, had accepted the explanation that Daniel was her father who had been away for work but now wanted to be part of her life. She'd been shy at first, but Daniel's genuine interest in her drawings, stories, and questions had quickly won her over. Will Daddy be coming for dinner tonight? She'd asked that morning over breakfast, the word Daddy still new on her tongue, but growing more natural each time she said it. Not tonight, Ladybug, Rebecca had answered. But he's taking us to the park on Saturday, remember? He said something about kites. The memory of Emily's excited smile made Rebecca's heart ache in a bittersweet way as she pulled into the parking lot of the music school. The piano lessons had been Emily's idea, inspired by learning that Daniel had played as a child. It was One of many small connections forming between father and daughter, each one both wonderful and painful for Rebecca to witness. As she parked, she spotted a familiar figure waiting outside the building. Daniel, looking much more like the college student she had fallen in love with in worn jeans and a simple sweater, than the billionaire who had stormed into the dealership that day. His expensive watch and designer shoes were the only hints of his wealth, and even those would be easy to miss if you didn't know to look. Rebecca felt the now familiar flutter in her stomach as she got out of the car. Despite her best efforts to keep emotional distance, something about seeing Daniel with Emily was slowly melting the wall she had built around her heart over years of struggle and loneliness. "I was in the neighborhood," he explained when she approached, though they both knew his office was across town. "Sure you were," Rebecca said with a small smile. "How did the meeting with your investors go this morning?" Daniel shrugged. "Same as always. They want growth numbers. I want to focus on long-term sustainability. But we compromised." He hesitated before adding, "I told them I'd be taking Thursday afternoons off from now on. For family reasons." Family reasons. The words hung between them, full of meaning neither was quite ready to define. Before Rebecca could respond, the doors to the music school opened and students began filing out. Emily spotted them immediately, her face lighting up as she raced over. "Dad, I didn't know you were coming," she called out, the simple words making Daniel's eyes shine. "I learned a whole song today." "You did? That's amazing." Daniel crouched down to her level as she reached them, giving her his full attention as she described every detail of her lesson. Rebecca watched them together, struck as always by their similar mannerisms, the way they both talked with their hands when excited, the identical furrow in their brows when concentrating. "Can I play it for you when we get home?" Emily asked, looking back and forth between her parents hopefully. Daniel glanced at Rebecca, careful not to overstep. "If that's okay with your mom, I don't want to intrude on your evening routine." 3 months ago, Rebecca might have made an excuse. Today she found herself saying, "We're having spaghetti. Nothing fancy, but there's plenty if you want to join us." The smile that spread across Daniel's face made him look years younger. "I'd like that very much." As they walked toward their cars, Emily between them swinging both their hands, Rebecca realized how normal this felt. Like they were just any family heading home after a child's activity. Not a single mom who had struggled for years, a billionaire who had missed his daughter's early childhood, and the little girl connecting them together. "I can follow you in my car," Daniel said as they reached the parking lot. Emily tugged at his hand. "Can I ride with Dad, Mom? Please? He lets me pick the music." Rebecca laughed. "Oh, so that's why you've been singing those old rock songs. I wondered where you learned them." Daniel had the grace to look sheepish. "Sorry, my dad always played Led Zeppelin on car rides. Guess some traditions die hard." "It's fine," Rebecca said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "I'll see you both at home." As she drove back alone, Rebecca thought about that word, home. For so long, it had been just her and Emily in their small apartment, making the best of what they had. Now home was becoming something different, expanding, to include weekend visits to Daniel's house with its big yard and swing set, pizza and movie nights with all three of them crowded on her small couch, and phone calls just to say goodnight. When she pulled into her parking space at the apartment complex, Daniel's modest sedan, his everyday car he'd explained, the Rolls being just for show, was already there. Through the window of their ground floor apartment, she could see Emily excitedly showing Daniel her sheet music while he nodded with genuine interest. Mr. Peterson walked past, carrying groceries to his car. Rebecca had been shocked to learn he lived in the same complex in one of the smaller units. After losing his job at the dealership, he'd found work as a junior salesman at the electronics store in the mall, a significant step down in both status and salary. He nodded politely when he saw her, his face flushing with embarrassment as it always did now. Rebecca returned the nod, feeling no satisfaction in his downfall. Life had a way of humbling everyone eventually. Her own pride had nearly kept her from accepting help when she needed it most, and it had taken seeing Daniel's vulnerability, his regret over missing years of his daughter's life, to show her that sometimes strength meant allowing others to be there for you. As she walked toward her apartment, toward the sound of Emily's laughter and Daniel's encouraging voice, Rebecca realized that sometimes life's hardest moments, like being humiliated at a car dealership, could unexpectedly open doors that had long been closed. The future wasn't certain. She and Daniel were taking things one day at a time, rebuilding trust through small moments of connection. But for the first time in 8 years, Rebecca allowed herself to hope, not just for Emily to have her father in her life, but for herself to have someone to share the journey with. As she opened the door, Daniel looked up with a smile that still made her heart skip, just like it had in college. "Just in time," he said. "The maestro is ready for her debut performance." Rebecca set down her purse and joined them by the small keyboard they'd set up in the living room corner. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," she said, and meant every word.